Hello, I'm Kerry Bernard, and this is medical terminology, anatomy and physiology, and pathophysiology for healthcare providers. We're going to go over medical terms, the pathophysiology of the human body, the anatomy and physiology of the human body, and we're going to try and make it a little bit easier to understand so when you get into the field, you can use these terms on a regular basis, pronounce them properly, and when you see information on a patient's chart, it will all make a little bit more sense. What I want to start off with is some medical terminology associated with the planes of the body. This refers to directional terminology. Our human body, we can be divided into right side and left side. That's going to be called a sagittal plane. If I'm divided right down the middle and have an equal right side and an equal left side, we would say that's mid-sagittal. But on the other hand, if you were to just cut me through my shoulder and have my arm and shoulder over here, and then the rest of me over here, I would still be considered a cut through the sagittal plane. My right arm and shoulder dangling over here, the rest of my body over here. Okay, so mid-sagittal is right through the middle of me, producing an equal right side and an equal left side, whereas sagittal is just right side and left side. Another plane of the body is frontal. If you were to cut me right through here, okay, giving me a front portion and a back portion, that would be referred to as the frontal plane or the coronal plane. We could also say that the front is called the anterior surface, or you could also refer to it as the ventral surface. The back side would be posterior or dorsal. Okay, so anterior or ventral, that's the front. The back would be posterior or dorsal. Enlargement of the heart. Enlargement of the heart. Well, the combining form for heart is cardio. Megaly is a suffix which means enlargement. So cardio, megaly would be an enlargement of the heart. Okay, the part of the small intestine that connects with the stomach. Okay, if this is my stomach, okay, this is the esophagus. Right here would be the lower esophageal sphincter, or LES. Okay, that limits the food that comes down the esophagus. It limits its access into the stomach. This would be the first part of the small intestine, and we would call this the duodenum. Okay, the duodenum. The medical term for headache, cephalo is the medical term that means head. So we combine that with the suffix algia, which means pain. We get the term cephalalgia. Cephalalgia. Excessive vomiting. Excessive vomiting. Emesis means vomiting. Excessive would be hyper. Hyperemesis would be excessive vomiting. Incision into the gallbladder. Cholecyst is the root word for gallbladder, and the suffix tomy means to cut into. So cholecystomy would be to cut into the gallbladder. Enlargement of the kidney. Enlargement of the kidney. Well, the combining form nephro means kidney, and we just said a minute ago, megaly means an enlargement. So nephromegaly would be an enlargement of the kidney. Destruction or breakdown of fat. Lipid or fat, the combining form for that is lipo. Lysis is a suffix that means to break down. So lipolysis would be a combining form that means to break down fat. Generating heat through the tissues. Generating heat through the tissues. Diathermy. Diathermy. Thermo means temperature. Okay. Dia means across or through. And then Y in this case would be pertaining to. Pertaining to heat across the tissues. Diathermy. Tachy. Tachy is a prefix which means fast. Tachycardia would mean a fast heart rate. So tachy is a prefix that means fast. The opposite of that, of course, would be brady. Bradycardia, for example, would be a very slow heart rate. Okay. A combining form that means pus. Okay. The combining form that means pus is pio. Pio means pus. That might be discharge from an organ due to infection. Okay. A prefix meaning toward. A prefix meaning toward. Ad means toward, but the prefix ab means away. And what those really mean is, regarding toward and away, ad means to bring back toward the midline, whereas ab means to take away from the midline. So to adduct means to bring back toward the midline of the body. To abduct means to take away from the midline of the body. Painful menstrual flow. The prefix dis means difficult, labored, or painful. Menorrhea means discharge, so dysmenorrhea would be a painful menstrual discharge. A word meaning fever. Pyrexia. Pyrexia. Pyro means fire. Pyro means fire. Low blood sugar. Hypo means low. The opposite of that is hyper, which means excessive or above. Okay. Glyco means sugar. You may also hear pertaining to a condition or an abnormal condition of the blood, emia. If somebody were to have low blood sugar, you might see the term hypoglycemia. Hypoglycemia. Okay? Emia is a suffix which means condition or abnormal condition of the blood. Hypo, we said, means low, and then glyco means sugar. The prefix epi. Epi, E-P-I, means above. The epidermis, for example. This is what we would refer to as the epidermis, our outermost layer of skin. It's actually 20 to 40 layers of dead skin cells. Beneath that is the dermis, and that's where our blood vessels are, our hair follicles, our sebaceous glands, the nerve endings. All of those structures are located in the dermis, and therefore the epidermis is above the dermis. Okay. So, if this is my dermis layer, up here would be the epidermis, sitting on top of the dermis layer. Surgical puncturing of the pleura. Okay. The suffix centesis means surgical puncture. Okay. Pleura is going to be the sac which surrounds our lungs. Okay. The pleural sac or pleural membrane. So that would be pleuracentesis. Pleuracentesis. Another common term that uses the suffix centesis, of course, would be during pregnancy. Okay, a female may have a procedure performed where they take fluid from the amniotic sac, and they refer to that as an amniocentesis. A common word for sternum. Sternum is the breastbone. Okay? And so a common term, a non-medical term for sternum would be the breastbone. A fungal infection of the toenail. A fungal infection of the toenail. Onycho means toenail. Myco means fungus. Osis means abnormal condition. So an abnormal condition of a fungal infection of the toenail. Okay, onychomycosis. Onychomycosis. Smallpox. Okay. We said we would discuss some pathophysiology in this class and some terms associated with diseases. Variola, okay, is the medical term for smallpox. Smallpox. Okay. A bruise. Okay. A bruise can be called a contusion, or it could be called a hematoma. Hemato means blood. The suffix oma means tumor, so a hematoma would literally be a blood tumor. Cyano. Cyano is a combining form that means blue. So if we take the combining form cyano, and then we add the suffix osis, an abnormal condition of, we would have an abnormal condition of blue. Somebody who wasn't getting adequate oxygen would have cyanosis. Peri, the word part peri means around or to surround. Around or to surround. The word part dys, well, we already had dys a little while ago when we talked about dysmenorrhea. Okay. Dys is a prefix that means difficult, labored, or painful. Itis, the suffix itis. Itis means swelling. If we add the combining form arthro, we get the term arthritis, for example. Now, you won't see this term used necessarily with itis, but another combining form that's a synonym for arthro is articulo. Articulo also means joint, just like arthro. Arthro and articulo are synonyms. If somebody has blood in their stool, they may have to do a stool guaiac test for occult blood. Okay, occult means hidden. Okay, occult means hidden. And if they were going to do a stool guaiac test, that would be to look for hidden blood. The word part that means neck, okay, this region. Cervico. Cervico means neck. The vertebrae, in other words, the bones of our spinal column, in this region, we typically refer to those as cervical vertebrae. Cervico is the combining form that means neck. Word part that means excision. Word part that means excision. Ectomy. The suffix ectomy means excision. Appendectomy, for example, okay, would be to take out the appendix. Appendectomy, using the suffix that means excision or to remove. The suffix raphe means to suture. If we took a combining form like heart and added it to the suffix raphe, cardioraphe would be to suture the heart. A word part meaning white. Okay, a word part meaning white. Leuco is a combining form that means white. Or excuse me, a word part, in this case a prefix. Erythro means red. You will often see those two together when we're talking about white blood cells, leukocytes, and red blood cells, erythrocytes. Excessive tissue formation, excessive tissue formation. Hyperplasia, hyperplasia. Hyperplasia. For example, you may hear the disease benign prostatic hyperplasia. Okay, it's excessive tissue growth of prostate tissue. But hyperplasia, okay, excessive growth of tissue. Phago, okay, phago. Phago is a word part that means to eat or swallow. A phagocyte or phagocyte is a type of white blood cell that kind of acts like Pac-Man and will eat foreign pathogens. Okay, a bacteria that happens to get into our body might be eaten by a white blood cell called a phagocyte. Incision into the abdomen. Incision into the abdomen. Laparotomy. Laparotomy. Laparo means abdomen. Okay. Tomy is going to be an incision. Okay. Some surgical procedures now where they used to open the body up, they might use a scope to go in through the navel, and that would be called a laparotomy. Laparotomy. Okay. The abbreviation for urine, UR. Okay. You'll also see uro as a combining form for urine. Uremia might be blood in the urine, for example, but uro is a combining form that means urine. The opposite of superficial would be deep. We talked about the planes of the body. That's part of what's known as directional terminology. Well, the different depths of the body also deals with the direction in the body and gives us more specificity. Something that's superficial is on our surface. On the other hand, something that's deep means it's in the deeper tissue of the body. I might get a sunburn, that's a superficial burn. On the other hand, a burn from fire because I was playing around a campfire with gasoline, that might cause a 3rd-degree burn, which we would consider a deep burn. Gastroscopy would be the process of viewing the stomach. Gastro is a combining form that means stomach. Scopy or scopy is the process of viewing. Okay, so the viewing of the stomach would be gastroscopy. Nephro and reno. Both are word parts that mean kidney. Okay, both are word parts that mean kidney. Okay, if somebody has problems with their kidney, they may go to a nephrologist. When we're talking about the urinary system, we may also refer to it as the renal system. Okay, so you'll hear both of those combining forms for kidney quite often. Pyelolithotomy. Pyelolithotomy. Incision into the renal pelvis for removal of calculi. Okay. Pyelo is going to be a combining form that means renal pelvis. Litho is going to mean stone. Renal calculi are often called kidney stones. Okay. And then surgical incision is going to be tomy. Okay, the suffix surgical incision, tomy means that, surgical incision. So pyelolithotomy. Cyto is a combining form that means cell. Somebody who studies cells would be called a cytologist. You may also see the suffix cyte, and that too means cell. Okay, a myocyte, for example, would be a muscle cell. Okay, but cyto is a combining form, cyte is a suffix, they both mean cell. An electrocardiograph. An electrocardiograph is the device used to monitor electrical activity of the heart. Okay, the electrocardiogram is the actual recording. So the graph, the electrocardiograph, is the device that monitors electrical activity, whereas the electrocardiogram is going to be the actual printout. A word part that means hard. Sclero, sclero. Sclero means hard. Sclero means hard. Scleroderma, for example, would describe hardening of the skin. We had cyto and cytologist a second ago. Histo means tissues. A histologist would study tissues. Okay. Incision into the chest wall. Thoraco. Thoraco. Thoraco means thorax or chest. Okay, so thoracotomy would be an incision into the chest wall. Thoracotomy. Term meaning into a vein. Intravenous. Intravenous. Intra means into. Veno is a combining form that means vein, and then the suffix ous means pertaining to. This is our kidney. This is a ureter. This is the bladder. This is the urethra. This would be called the urinary meatus. The opening to the outside of the body. A term meaning to cut into the tube from the kidney to the bladder would be ureterotomy. Ureterotomy. Again, this is the ureter. Uretero is the combining form. The suffix tomy means to make an incision. So ureterotomy would be a surgical incision into the tube that leads from the kidney to the bladder. A term that means under the skin. Under the skin. Hypo means below. Dermo means skin. IC means pertaining to. So hypodermic, hypo, dermo, Ia. Oops, excuse me, ick. I'm sorry. Hypodermic means pertaining to below the skin. Ick means pertaining to, hypo means below, dermo means skin. Afferent, the term afferent means conducting toward. Afferent means it's going towards something, whereas efferent means just the opposite, conducting away. Efferent would be just the opposite, conducting away. Neoplasm. Neoplasm. Neoplasm means new growth. Okay. Neo means new. Plasm means growth, new growth. I'm going to draw a very simplistic diagram of the heart for this next term I want to discuss. Our heart is made up of 4 chambers. This is the right atrium, the right ventricle, okay. And we're in what's known as anatomical position. So this is why I'm saying that this would be my right side, this would be my left side. So that's why I'm labeling it as right atrium and right ventricle. Left atrium, left ventricle. This structure that divides the heart into the right and left side, this is referred to as the septum. The right atrium is a receiving chamber that receives deoxygenated blood. And it's full of CO2, the waste product of metabolism. It's going to pump the blood into the right ventricle. The right ventricle is then going to pump that deoxygenated blood to the lungs. The deoxygenated blood is going to go to the lungs. The carbon dioxide will be rid from the body when we exhale. When we inhale, the lungs take the oxygen out of the inhaled air. That oxygen ultimately is returned to the bloodstream, enters the left atrium from the lungs. So the left atrium is a receiving chamber for oxygen-rich blood, and then the left ventricle is going to receive that oxygen-rich blood and pump it out to all parts of the body. So if somebody had a condition called atriomegaly, atrio would be a combining form for these upper chambers of the heart. Okay. Atrium is going to be a single one of these chambers, right? Atrium. If we're referring to both of them, we would say atria. That's plural. Okay. The word stetho. Stetho means chest, a stethoscope, okay? Commonly used instrument by medical professionals. Stetho means chest. Iron-containing pigment is referred to as hemoglobin. Hemoglobin. Okay. Globin is protein. Heme means iron. So hemoglobin is an iron-containing pigment. One complete heartbeat, combining contraction and relaxation phases of the heart, is known as a cardiac cycle. A cardiac cycle. On an EKG, we would see something like this. This is one cardiac cycle. The P wave refers to the depolarization or contraction of the atria. The QRS complex refers to depolarization of the ventricles, contraction of the ventricles. And then the T wave is going to refer to the repolarization or resetting of the ventricles. Okay, so this is a cardiac cycle, one complete phase of the heart, contracting, then relaxing. Angio. Angio is a combining form that means vessels. Vaso, V-A-S-O, that also means vein or vessels. Vesiculo and vasculo also mean vessels. Vesiculo and vasculo. All of those mean vessels. Necro. Necro would be a combining form that means death or death of tissue. Carcino means cancer. Carcinoma would be a cancerous tumor. Malignant means a tumor that is cancerous. Benign means a tumor that's non-cancerous. Malignant tumors typically will spread. We call that to metastasize or metastasis. On the other hand, benign tumors are typically encapsulated in a connective tissue surrounding it, and they do not spread. Change in tissue. Change in tissue. Metaplasia means change in tissue. We said a little while ago, hyperplasia meant an increase in tissue. Metaplasia, with meta meaning change. A suffix which means surgical repair. A suffix which means surgical repair. Plasty. Earlier we mentioned the combining form arthro, meaning joint. So a surgical repair of a joint would be arthroplasty. Self. Okay. The term self is auto. Auto. If somebody has an autoimmune disease, that means their own cells have turned against them. Physiology. Physiology is going to be the study of body functions. Anatomy is going to be the study of body structures. An instrument used to view the nose. An instrument used to view the nose. A rhinoscope. Rhino is a combining form that means nose. Naso is also a combining form that means nose. Prognosis. Prognosis. Prognosis means a prediction of outcome. A prognosis after an injury is a prediction of the outcome, how the body will heal. Diagnosis is making the original call on what is wrong with a person based on their signs, symptoms, vital signs, and other tests. Resection. Okay. Resection of something is cutting into or removing a portion of something. So that would be a resection. A suffix which means discharge or flow. Ria means a discharge or flow. Discharge or flow. Okay. Ria means discharge or flow. I'm going to wrap it up here for the moment. We do have more that I want to cover. But again, this serves as a good place for us to wrap up. And please take the time to review this material along with your other notes. I think going through this will be a good way to jog your memory. It's tying together a lot of what we've covered. And so we'll also have additional information along with this. But again, this is a good place to stop, and we'll continue at a later time with medical terminology, anatomy and physiology, and pathophysiology.